Welcome one and all to Influence Music Podcast, exploring new music and making connections back to previous musical generations via panel debates, conversations and interviews with artists, enthusiasts and media insiders.
Welcome one and all to Influence Music Podcast, episode 14. Thank you very much for joining us. My name is Mark Williams and I am your host for today. We are back with a new episode all about live performances. Firstly, let me introduce my co-hosts for this evening. Personal friend, radio host, music artist, Mark Anthony. Mark, you good?
Hey, all good. Thank you for having me on yet another soon-to-be great show. And
completing the dream team once again is another good friend of mine, blogger, beatmaker, Lee the new beatmaker. Lee, what's happening?
Good to be here, folks, and hope you're all safe and well, listeners.
So, yeah, we're going to be talking about our favourite live performances. So, first of all, each one of us is going to have a quick stint talking about our favourite performances that we've attended, and then I'm going to go on a bit of a dribble about my favourite live albums and iconic performances that I think everybody should check out on YouTube or in whatever format you can view them in. So firstly, let's start with our favourite live performances that we've attended. We've discussed this already. And Mark, you're going to go first. So Mark, what are the favourite live performances that you've ever attended?
So the first concert I'm going to talk about is Jamiroquai in Finsbury Park. It was around 1993-1994 time, and I went with my school friends. Now, at the time, I liked Jamiroquai in a way that, I liked the singles they released. Everyone knows singles like... And I wouldn't consider myself a fan, but I liked them. And I ended up going to the concert in Finsbury Park, which, is on my doorstep. And it was Erykah Badu, who I didn't know a lot about at the time, but she was just coming through and Erykah Badu was the support act. And that concert finished, I think within that couple of hours, in my mind, I just turned into Jamiroquai's biggest fan. And after the concert, I remember just racing, I think it was our price back then, and just, spending the little pocket money I had just on, a lot of the albums they released at the time and looking them up and all the rest of it. Obviously, back then you couldn't look them up as easy as you can now on the internet and stuff. But that's a concert I'd always look back on quite fondly. The second concert I'm going to talk about, and I won't go on sort of too much here, but I just wanted to talk about three separate concerts, was in 2007. I was lucky enough to attend and kind of be involved in a festival called the Demon Days Festival, which was at the Dreamland theme park in Margate. So Dreamland was a theme park in Margate that was closed for like 10 years and they reopened it up, and Demon Days was the first event that they hosted at the venue. And what was really, really, really legendary about the performance, was me liking the Gorillaz, who were the band who were headlining the festival. There were various artists at the festival, such as Mavis Staples from the Staples Sisters, Carly Simon, Grace Jones, Soul, one of my favourite hip hop acts, a singer called Jenny Beth, who's the lead singer of a punk band called the Savages, Pusha T, Danny Brown, Vince Staples, Kalela, Dram. And for me, I was just in kind of musical heaven because a lot of my favourite acts at the time, my favourite acts were just all in one festival, and it was amazing. And homage to a lot of the singers who had worked with the Gorillaz, and their voices were featured on the songs, but unfortunately they'd passed away. Like Bobby Womack, he was quite a frequent collaborator with the Gorillaz, and they paid homage to him at the festival, and Dennis Hopper, the actor, who sort of collaborated musically with the Gorillaz, believe it or not, as well as Lou Reed. And the festival was probably one of my favourite festivals, again, as well as the music that I appreciated. It was just the whole vibe of the festival. It left everyone on a high afterwards. And I've not forgotten Popcorn, the reggae artist Popcorn was there as well. He was great. And the third one, again, going back to my childhood a bit, New Edition, one of my favourite acts. And I was lucky enough to see them in 1996 when they got back together for the Home Again tour. And that was just in East London. It was just in a venue in Stratford. And having all of the different characters within the band who by then had, elevated as artists in their own right. So, everyone knows Bobby Brown. You had Ralph Tresvant, Johnny Gill, Bell Biv DeVoe. For me, them all under one roof, reuniting as New Edition, and it was a great show. Although the sad part of the tour is that tour went on to be a disaster because of internal conflicts. And they actually didn't finish the tour. But I was lucky enough to see them perform before the tour ended in disaster. I think it was in Hawaii. The tour ended.
There's three things that when you go to live gigs that you're always going to be guaranteed of. If you're going to go see Guns N' Roses, they ain't going to show up. If you're going to go and see Lauryn Hill, they're going to be late. And if you're going to go see a New Edition, there's going to be conflicts on the tour. So try and get one of the early dates rather than the late dates. That's like, they're like key facts of going to those gigs.
It's true. And Bobby Brown will openly say now in interviews, and he openly does say that he can hardly remember that tour because he was just so high. And I tell you what, Mark, you're right, though, because even towards the end of, them finishing the tour abruptly, it was a case where, is Bobby going to turn up or not? Will he be there or not? And there's footage online of, sometimes there's 4 of them performing, or 5 of them performing, because different members, because of the conflicts were so high, different members were missing shows and all the rest of it, and then it just ended in disaster and left them in a lot of financial ruin. But hey, that's a story for another show perhaps.
So I'll go next, but before I start, I'm going to list off some of the artists that I've seen or gigs I've been to that didn't make the 3. So firstly, 1988, I was 7. My mum took me to Wembley Stadium to see the Michael Jackson Bad tour. I've still got my Pepsi cup from the gig. It's probably worth about £25 now. I'm waiting for it to go on the Antiques Roadshow in maybe 50 years, see what my son can get for it. But that was my first live music performance. And as much as it's massive and we can all say, wow, the disappointment I felt at the time was massive, because I just assumed, my mum said we're going to see Michael Jackson perform. I just thought he'd be like as far away from me as the TV is at home. And when you get to Wembley and you realise actually I'm just watching him on a big screen, it was, at the time I was disappointed, but it was such an iconic thing to do that I have to mention it. I'd have to mention I attended with Lee the first time NERD toured the UK. After releasing the In Search Of album, we went to go and see them at, I believe it was Shepherd's Bush Empire.
Yeah, that's right.
But because I went with Lee, I didn't want to use that one in case he wanted to talk about it. So I'm going to move on from that one very, very quickly. And Childish Gambino at Lovebox 2018. He headlined and he was absolutely amazing. But he's not going to make my top 3. So
that surprises me.
I've got a reason for picking my top 3. So the first one in my top 3 is a bit of a controversial one. It's June 2016, I think it was. And I went to a festival. It might be 2017. I went to a festival in Brighton called Wildlife. Now at the festival was K-Tronada, Pusha T, Rudimental, Kano, Georgia Smith, Disclosure, and none of these acts stole the show for me. The one act that had the performance that shocked me and I was in awe of was Busta Rhymes.
Oh yeah.
Now the reason being, big shout out to all the boys that came with me. So all the Bajawa brothers, Brownie, Roger was there, 12s was there. So big shout out to Gareth. We didn't expect it to be that good, but what Busta did brilliantly was didn't plug his latest music. He just played his greatest hits. Now, how many times have you been to a gig or seen someone at a festival and they've played their latest album rather than just playing the tracks that they're known for? And that's what Busta did. And I wouldn't say I was a massive Busta Rhymes album. I wouldn't say I was a massive Busta Rhymes fan, because I don't believe there is a great Busta Rhymes album. But if you took all the brilliant Busta Rhymes tracks and put them together, it was brilliant. And the crowd was going wild. And, you know, he did Put Your Hands Where My Eyes Can See. He did Woo-Ha. He did pretty much every famous Busta track he did. And it was the surprise of it and the way that it got the crowd going. Fast forward to April 2017. I'm at Coachella in California. The sun is setting. It's about 7 o'clock. I've had a lovely day. I'm on a nice vibe. Everything's flowing. And I go and see Kaytranada. And it was just the combination of Kaytranada and the setting and the fact that the crowd got it. I think that's another thing. You have to be in an environment where somebody appreciates the artist that's playing. It's all got to come together. Crowd energy, location, and the performance. And it's that's what made that Kaytranada set so special. My last one, 2017. I went to Hyde Park, whatever it's called, summertime, whatever it is, to see Stevie Wonder with my mum, and he was just amazing. Like, it was just the greatest gig I've ever been to, because this is a guy that technically should be long past his best, and it was just like, this is exactly how I remember the record sounding. You know what I mean? And I was in awe of him. My mum was in awe of him. It was just special. It was out in Hyde Park, all those people. It's right up there. It's like an iconic moment, family moment, as well as a music moment for me. So they would be my top 3 gigs.
I have to say, I tried to get tickets to that, Mark, so I'm quite jealous.
You know what I mean? Should have hit me up, bruv. I've got connections.
Yeah, I remember seeing some footage of that online, and it really looked amazing. I have to say, without sounding like I'm backtracking, when you mentioned Shepherd's Bush Empire, I have just remembered I was lucky enough to see Mobb Deep about 4 years ago, Shepherd's Bush Empire, and that was I love Mobb Deep. That was a really, really great gig. It was Rodney P and Bruce Manuva, who were the support acts, and I didn't even think of that until you mentioned Shepherd's Bush Empire. It's just come back to me, but that was a great gig, but I wasn't as sophisticated as you that I put in my actual top 3. I was just talking about 3 great gigs that I had.
That's another thing that I should state. Personally, I'm not one for arena gigs. I'd much rather go and see an intimate at O2 Academy, Brixton, or Shepherd's Bush Empire. I once went with our other co-host, George, to go and see The Weeknd perform House of Balloons in a venue that maybe only had 100 people in it, and that was a pretty good gig. But yeah, I'd rather it be small than... I know you can get those big kind of arena performances, and I've got respect for any artist that has the capability of putting a show like that on. But for me, I prefer the intimacy of a gig.
Same here.
Anyway, Lee, what have you got for us?
Well, they were amazing moments. Rest in peace to Prodigy of Mobb Deep, of course. Something that I find really interesting, actually, is like you say, Mark. I don't think that. I think that as an MC, Busta Rhymes is both, and I've said this online before, so it's Lee Bingo a little bit. I think that for how massive a superstar Busta Rhymes is, he is A, underrated as a lyricist and an MC, and B, is underrated as a live performer. And so I would imagine that Busta Rhymes is up there for a lot of people, even though he is still underrated. I think a lot of people will say he's one of the I've never seen him live, but I've seen him at live shows and events and so on and so forth on YouTube and whatnot, where it seems to me it's Busta Rhymes and it's KRS-One as far as live shows. And Mark, you've already mentioned the BDP live album. So, I think that's really interesting. I think it might be something for you guys to explore more than me, because I'm kind of throwing this to the wall and seeing what sticks here. But what I find very interesting is that both KRS-One and Busta Rhymes, more than a lot of other rappers do, have that crossover with that whole kind of Jamaican reggae, dancehall, sound clash, killer sound boy culture sort of element. KRS-One's done songs with Buju Banton back in the day and all those types of artists. Busta Rhymes, again, features on different reggae songs and vice versa. And you get the feeling that with them, it isn't just let me cross over when reggae is the most prominent music in the pop charts. A lot of people jump on the reggae thing and vice versa. I don't get the feeling with those two that is what they're doing. It's like it's a part of their musical DNA. So maybe that's something worthwhile for another show, and whatnot, just that kind of live energy and how they really go out to really kill a performance where, if we're going to stereotype, we're all massive hip hop fans here, but I don't think I'm saying anything too controversial when I say that there's not a lot of hip hop shows in the greatest live shows of all time. Bracket, even with us three as massive hip hop fans. But yeah, going on to what you've actually asked me, and just very quickly, can we only have 3 live experiences?
God, no.
I mean, I don't want to have
whatever ones you want to talk about, bruv.
Oh wow! Right, okay. So, I bought tickets for D'Angelo for his Black Messiah.
Oh yeah, the one he did with the Vanguard
gig.
Yeah.
The Vanguard, which, if I remember correctly now, was early 2015 after that triumphant album, which is an amazing album. And I have to be completely honest, I was very, very nervous as far as will D'Angelo perform, will tragedy strike, or will he not be able to make it, and so on. And me and my other half and a friend of ours who is absolutely obsessed with D'Angelo, absolutely obsessed, went to go and see him. We went, I want to say it was Shepherd's Bush Empire, Shepherd's Bush Arena, Shepherd's Bush Empire, and he and Pino Palladino on bass and Kendra Foster on backing vocals, and he was just absolutely magnificent. And D'Angelo fans from all walks of life and all parts of his journey, because I think there's people who followed D'Angelo through his career. And then there's maybe people who went for some of the brown sugar stuff that he did. Some people maybe went for the voodoo stuff that he did. Some people went for the Vanguard stuff that he did. But I don't think there was anyone who didn't leave that place feeling elated. It felt like you were at some. It was just a celebration of music and life and the underdog, because D'Angelo's been through so much as a lot of the musical geniuses are, that the demons and whatnot, where you're always kind of thinking, oh my gosh, what now? He's been very open with certain struggles. So to see him come out with an amazing album and then to be able to do it and his earlier stuff live so magnificently, like you say, Mark W. There's. I think everyone would prefer an intimate gig, but there are certain people that are just used to just selling out massive arenas and I don't want to sound like Tim Westwood here, but just used to doing it big. And one of those is Billy Joel. I saw Billy Joel on September 10th, 2016, I want to say, at the Wembley Arena with about 60,000 other people. And there can be a disappointment when you go to a massive gig and you realise just how far back you are, where you are like, wow, I'm in a different postcode, or for American people, I'm in a different zip code to the performer that I've come to see, and so on. But we were as far away as you can be from Billy Joel and the stage at Wembley Arena, but he as a performer is so used to doing those types of massive gigs. He made you feel like you were in the jazz cafe, sat 3 feet away from him having a glass of wine. I want to say Billy Joel did something like, I forgot what they called it, a residency. He's the type of guy that's done a residency of Madison Square Garden, where he literally did something like 30 shows in 30 days or some madness. So to come and do Wembley Arena, it was just another day in the office, and he was able to do the big, powerful 80s power ballad, power ballad, but the really powerful 1980s type of stuff that he's so good at with the hyperbole and whatnot. But he was able to joke with the audience and be really tender, and when he spoke, it was like he was just speaking to you. And like I say, when you think there must be, again, I stand corrected, but there must be like 50,000 people at Wembley Arena. So to make you feel like that, he did a performance of his track Zanzibar, which had to be heard to be believed. He did New York State of Mind, literally at like 11:30 on September 10, 2016. He did We Didn't Start the Fire in an amazing performance. Uptown Girl, he had me doing my because of oh yes, that's right, Mark, you're the person that hates on Uptown Girl. So yeah, me and about 60,000 other people loving it. It was one of the greatest moments of my life. I think Mark's unplugged.
Doing the dad dancing. We're doing the dad
dancing. I think Mark's unplugged on my phone.
Actually, saying what you're saying there, I've actually experienced that. And like you said, I went to a Michael Bublé gig. It was the same. He had the ability to kind of keep the crowd interacted, even though there's thousands of people there. So yeah, totally understand what you mean.
Yeah. Yeah, another great one that Mark and I were at. I mean, one of my favourite gigs of all time was Basement Jackson and Roixop at Brixton Academy. What would that be? 2004, 2003,
yeah,
something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that you folks were talking about missing Carnival on a recent show. And I can't say, it was just like Carnival, because it wasn't. But it had those Carnival vibes. Energy, I mean, it had the dancers coming on in the regalia, the big energy. They had a spoken word piece on there. Shout out to Alon Conway, who I had mutual friends with, and chopped it up with every now and again as a young'un and whatnot. So I hope you're doing well, sir. But yeah, to have Roixop as the warm-up act. A few months before me falling in love with them, and then just Basement Jaxx on that. I want to say it was a Rooty album.
Yeah,
remember the album? Oh, he killed it. It was amazing. And Mark, as you were,
and because of the venue as well, so you had that sloping floor. It was easy to see from everywhere, but then you kind of helped with the energy because it was packed and the acoustics were good.
Oh, and the audio visual.
Yeah, it was just a really good gig. It was a very, very, very good gig.
And Basement Jaxx are Brixton boys, aren't they? Brixton meets Camberwell. So to be at Brixton Academy, they were like, we're home.
I remember walking out there thinking to myself, I'd been to a gig. It was worth every penny spent.
Yeah. Can I say some other ones very quickly? The Roots at the South Bank Centre as part of the Ornette Coleman Meltdown in 2009. And if I'm allowed to do a little bit of it's not even a humble brag, it's a brag.
I know where this is going.
I was in the front row. I had my The Roots Rising Down t-shirt on, and I've rapped along to every song for about 10 songs in a row. And Black Thought, being a master of ceremonies that he is, he was, introducing the band and all this type of stuff in between the songs. But he gave a special shout out to me in the front row for knowing every single word. The crowd went mad. The beer boys behind me grabbed me and shook me like we just scored the winning goal at Wembley. He came over to the side of the stage and grinned, and at the end of the show we slapped hands and we chatted for a moment. An amazing gig. I've seen those several times. The Roots and John Legend, when they did their Wake Up album, that the crowd that evening was dry as. It was really what I'd call like a gentrified gig.
I thought the album was a bit like that though.
No, the album was amazing. No, I think the album. I think you could say the album is a bit subdued in points, but the crowd were dry. Like if you were in the audience that night, it was like, come on, step your gig game up. You know what I mean?
You got to also appreciate, as much as John Legend is a very talented man, he's not the most charismatic of artists.
Maybe that's, I know, but you got Black Thought there just killing it, and you got Questler. But yeah, I know what you mean. Maybe I'm expecting too much. I tell you who else is fantastic live, and you may not even need to know. I mean, I know a few of her songs, to my other half being a big fan of hers. But we went to go and see Joan Armour Trading at the Indigo Club O2, like there's the O2 and then there's like the smaller bit called Indigo. Does that ring a bell?
At the Dome.
And she was amazing. I mean, as a singer-songwriter, she is a national treasure. And it was her. I want to say maybe a keyboardist and a drummer. The mix engineer. Props to the mix engineer. I reckon it was like her own mix engineer because everything sounded perfect. And this was when we're talking about gigs where you want that intimacy. It was her. She put so much meaning and that feeling of vulnerability and strength in her songs where you really feel like you're connecting with her. She was very witty. And again, that was just an amazing. So if you ever get the chance to see Joan Armatrading, and like I say, as someone who is a casual fan, like I know the popular songs of hers, I was blown away. Gangstar, I got to see Gangstar at Astoria back in the day. Rest in peace to Guru, DJ Premier, of course. I think that was during maybe the Owners album release, and it was just fantastic too. As much as I say, there's not a lot of hip hop. The stereotype is hip hop shows may not always be the most exciting. The exception to that stereotype and that rule were Guru and DJ Premier. So yeah, rest in peace to Guru. Also, Guru's Jazzmatazz, amazing Courtney Pine, Khalees, and people like that on stage with him over my first early years in London. I want to say 2000, 2001, 2002. And yeah, here's the obligatory Lee reference to Like Water for Chocolate. Common at the Jazz Cafe when he just dropped Like Water for Chocolate, Mark. So yeah.
Yeah, actually, I've got one that I should shout out as well. 2016, I went to the 20th anniversary gig of Nas's Illmatic at the Roundhouse. And I was a little bit wary. I went with my gig buddy, Holly. Big shout out to Holly. Yeah. And I was a little bit wary at the time because we were wary about the crowd. What was it going to be? It was a crowd of hip hop heads. It was one of the best crowds ever because the age range was kind of like us. It was just a good gig to go, and it's just such an iconic album. His performance was fantastic, and Nas is forever cemented in hip hop history because of that album. So it just goes hand in hand. So it was really, really special. But let's moving on from talking about our favourite live performances. We're just going to go a quick run through of some great live albums that I've looked at and I think you should all check out. Firstly, we're going to look at the MTV Unplugged range. We've got MTV Unplugged Nirvana from 1994. A great album. Check it out. Watch it on YouTube because visually the performance is really good as well. Lauryn Hill done an MTV Unplugged album in 2002. Jay-Z's one from 2001. And believe it or not, Maxwell's one was in 1997. Check all of those out. They're all fantastic. And the visuals on them are great as well. So don't just listen to the albums. Try and watch those concerts back on YouTube. The 1991 album that Lee previously mentioned by Boogie Down Productions, Hardcore Live, is the live hip-hop album in my eyes. If you're going to talk about one, it's that one. One of my favourites. Bob Marley and the Wailers Live 1975. His last gig in London, filmed for the BBC. Check it out. It's on YouTube. It's brilliant. If you're going to listen to it, though, try and get a copy of that album on vinyl because it's just even better on vinyl. I know Mark's a fan of this one. Fela Kuti and Ginger Baker from 1971. If you're talking about Afrobeats, jazz, musicality, creativity, the legend that is Giles Peterson put me onto this album. It's a must-have. It's a must-listen to. For anyone now that listens to Afrobeats and Alti and is into the current UK movement of hip hop sounds, you got to listen to this album because none of it would have ever have happened if it wasn't for Fela Kuti. And the last one is the biggest selling live album at the time, James Brown Live at Apollo 1963. Just for the fact of the big band, the live instruments, his massive voice. But you can hear the performance in what he's doing. The Godfather of Soul, the Godfather of Funk. Must have. We previously discussed some of our favourite live performances as well that are iconic to us off air. Well, actually, it wasn't off air. It was due to a technical fault. We never recorded it. But we're back to that. So we're going to repeat these quickly. Motown 25, 1983. Billie Jean. Michael Jackson absolutely killed it. If you've ever been out on a night out with Mark Anthony, he pretty much does the dance routine every time we go out when he's had a few drinks. So just get him going. If you've never seen the performance,
What?
just give Mark a few drinks and he'll show it to you.
Of course, man.
But no, I mean it's an iconic moment. We were talking about at work with Mark that, you know, when we were kids, it was what we did with our friends. It's what we aspired to. It was our magical music moment.
Yeah, I have to say, probably along with a lot of other, you know, boys at that time as well, Michael Jackson was my first musical idol. You know, he was the guy that, you know, we all wanted to be. You know, he was just, you know, like a god at that time of, you know, my life. He was
And
amazing.
what makes that performance so special is that it is a celebration of Motown 25.
Yeah.
So you're talking about one of the biggest music labels that had come out of America from the 60s to the 80s at the time. And you're talking about all those fantastic artists that performed and were talked about and showed up on the night. And this guy just blew them all out of the water. He just literally destroyed them. No one could even tell you what one of the other performances is on the night, because that one's the only one that mattered. And like I said before, those MTV performances by Usher, by Chris Brown, they're all aspiring to be that. That is the gold standard of live award performances. I spoke about Woodstock and Santana's set from Woodstock in 1969 because it was the first time he popped acid, and you can kind of see the pain that he's in, but as well the creative freedom, and it's just amazing. You got to check it out. He's sweating his nuts off, but he plays the most amazing set. That and Janis Joplin are the two sets from Woodstock that you must check out. And at the time, Mark, you mentioned
The Who. Yeah. So basically, I remember I just couldn't be bothered to turn the TV over. I was looking at Sky Arts, the Sky Arts channel, and it was The Who performing at the Isle of Wight Festival in 1976. And literally within 10 minutes of that concert starting on the television, I was just captivated. Now, what's really interesting about that is The Who don't perform music that I'd usually be into. You know, I know some of the biggest hits, but they don't usually perform music that I'd usually be into. But what captivated me about the concert was just the whole vibe. The band, the crowd just made me feel, I wish I was alive in 1976 and I wish I was in that crowd. In the same way, Mark, that you were talking about Woodstock, you know, the vibe, just the atmosphere. Yeah. I'm sure a lot of them are on various medicinal stuff as well. But it was just a great concert, and it's a concert that I've seen a few times on Sky Arts. You know, when I'm just doing stuff around the house, I'll have it in the background. And oddly enough, you know, it didn't make me want to buy a lot of the Who's albums, because I'm not going to lie and call myself a fan. I think you know, some of their music's quite good, but I wasn't a fan. But it was just the whole atmosphere, that 70s festival feel, where it just, you know, I think the word that just comes out of those events is just love. It's just, but yeah, great concert.
My next one that I was going to shout out is mainly due to the fact that we're very quick to call people culture vultures or exploiters or whatever term you want to use. But it's Muddy Waters performing in the late 70s at the Checkboard Lounge. If you don't know who he is, he's a famous blues singer. But in the crowd is the Rolling Stones, and they get up on stage and they perform with him, and it's pure magic. And they don't try and steal the show, and they don't overperform. They basically pay homage to the music that made them who they are, the music that they loved growing up in Kent, that they liked to play, that then inspired them to become a band. And I think if you're going to do one thing, then you've got to do the other. So big shout out to Rolling Stones. Like we said before, Lee mentioned previously that he'd seen Ronnie Wood and on that Netflix
Robert
documentary,
Johnson, Devil at the Crossroads.
Yeah, they feature on that as well. So enough love to them. And I'm not a big Rolling Stones fan. I'm not going to say I am, But I just appreciate that. I appreciate that. And the final one we mentioned was Erykah Badu at the Soul Awards 2008, Soul Train Awards 2018. It ties in with the fact that Mark saw Erykah Badu in his Jamiroquai gig, and the fact that I think everybody should worship Erykah Badu, and this is like a medley of her greatest hits. So big shout out.
Mark, have you seen Erykah Badu live?
Never.
Okay.
Never. I've couple of times I've gone to see her live. The gig's been put back for various reasons, and then the new date I've not been able to attend. In fact, I thought that's what happened to that Black Messiah gig.
Oh, maybe.
Because I think the gig was put back because I think I actually had tickets to go and see it as well, but I never went.
Oh, shame.
But I mean, in modern times, that happens quite a lot, especially in the times we're at the moment. As you know, fans, and if you don't know, we're hoping to start our Gig and Grub vlog pretty soon. But there's no gigs, and all the gigs we've booked up to go and see so far have been cancelled. However, we're hoping and praying that in October we will be able to go and see Thundercat, because that one hasn't been cancelled as of yet. Tickets still are on sale, so if you want to come and join us, please do. But I'm not optimistic, so we'll have to wait and see what happens.
I wrote down a few artists still on my list, or a bit of a time travel back to wish that I'd seen them at certain points. It'll take a few minutes to go through.
Go on, let's do this.
I recently got very absorbed in a fantastic documentary series called Jazz by the American filmmaker Ken Burns, and it goes all the way from the New Orleans birthplace of jazz, all the way through to, at the time, modern day jazz, which was people like Branford Marsalis and Winston Marsalis and maybe that early jazzmatazz era. So I'm assuming that the documentary's from the 90s, and what it meant to me as someone who likes jazz and appreciates jazz but isn't an expert is there were certain individuals that I always knew were legends, and I took it as legends. You know, they're legends, but I didn't realize just how legendary and how instrumental they were to popular music in just planting seeds that blossomed into. So people that I wish, I mean, there's a million different people, but if I could set off on a little musical time travel and maybe not necessarily this gig or that gig, but just to be near them and go, wow, this is you. Louis Armstrong would be one. Duke Ellington would be another. Which, like I say, if you watch this fantastic jazz documentary called Jazz by Ken Burns, it will become apparent why. I mean, talking about great American songwriters and composers and whatnot, I never, I didn't realize just how integral they were to American music, and not just
massively.
American jazz music, whatever that means, but American music.
But they're a bit early for me, but I do totally appreciate what you're saying.
Me too. But like I say, in that musical time travel way that you can sometimes go, I'd like to go back in time and see how they did this or how they created the pyramids or da-da-da-da-da. But just to be like, wow, you're Louis Armstrong. Wow, you're Duke Ellington. I'm here. Ditto with Little Richard.
Oh, yeah, massively.
I'm not saying that I'm not saying I'm the biggest Little Richard expert, but with the things that he went through, and he came out and was him, and one of the architects of rock and roll music. I never got to see James Brown, which I kick myself.
Especially with Chadwick Boseman recently passing. Rest in peace, Chadwick Boseman.
Oh,
check out that film because it's quite good. Get on up. I really enjoyed it.
Right,
it gives you a bit of story about James Brown that you might not know.
Right, I will do. The Beatles, of course. I mean, I'm more of the Beatles person than I am a Rolling Stones person. So I would love to have seen them. A
little cool day trip to feel connected to the Beatles is get on the train, get off at Euston, go to the British Library because they keep handwritten Beatles lyrics.
Nice.
So like, if you want to feel connected, it's nice to see their workings.
Yeah.
Like, as in to say what they've crossed out, what they haven't. You just go in and ask, they're all up on display.
Wow. Yeah. I watched recently, especially in the early lockdown phase. We went through a phase of watching both movies on the BFI player, but also concerts and so on and so forth. One that really springs to mind for me is Stop Making Sense, the Talking Heads live documentary, live video, recorded live performance, which is absolutely incredible. You know, if you're a fan of groups like Grandpa Lee here, hey youngsters, if you like the music of the 1975 the art school vibe, the funky white boy kind of vibe, the quirkiness, Talking Heads, Stop Making Sense, and all the R&B fans out there will immediately recognize their side group, Tom Tom Club, and Genius of Love, that they perform halfway through as the epic bass line from Mariah Carey's Fantasy and a million other songs. Marvin Gaye, Montreux Jazz Festival, 1984.
Yes, pretty special, that one. That was on my list, actually.
Queen at Live Aid. I mean, Mark, when you talk about Michael Jackson owning Motown 25,
Queen owned Live Aid.
I think there's not many people I feel that could compare to each other as far as off camera being very shy and having self-esteem issues and so on, and then just being able to go out onto a stage and have the whole world at a point eating out the palm of their hands. So Freddie Mercury right there as obviously the front man of Queen. Yeah. And I'd say the front man of Live Aid. I remember being a kid watching that live, just absolutely glued. I wish I'd have seen Prince live, and I think of things like his NFL halftime performance at the Super Bowl, where there's an amazing YouTube clip of him performing everything from All Along the Watchtower through to The Best of You by the Foo Fighters, and he looks absolutely fabulous. He's in 6-inch heels. The rain is coming down in a way that might electrocute Prince. There's him and glamorous dancers twirling around on this very smooth, polished stage at the Super Bowl, full of electric cables, and it's raining like God himself has opened the heavens. It's absolutely insane. And Prince, 0 F's given, is just taking it all in his stride. It's an amazing performance. I've seen George Clinton perform, but I think there's some magic about that late 70s, early 80s George Clinton Parliament Funkadelic that I guess you had to be there at the time. Ditto Roger Troutman. I really wish I'd have been able to see Roger Troutman and Zapp, all that funky late 70s, early 80s era. Janet Jackson, the Rhythm Nation tour. I'm not the biggest Madonna fan in the world. I'm really not, but the Madonna, the Girly tour, the Girly Show, I think it is. Shout out to my friend Andrea, who, it's Vogue and the sets that are based on My Fair Lady, and just as a visual spectacle, as well as the controversial elements of her music and her stage show at the time, a little bit like Prince pushing those boundaries of what is raunch and what is great showmanship. Hendrix, I wish I'd have seen, of course. Soul to Soul, back in the Funky Dread era, when they were really...
I'll tell you what,
wow.
We can talk about this one because we saw them not last year but the year before, didn't we, Mark?
Wow.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we did. And I remember spending my whole car journey on the way back home listening to Soul's back catalogue. It just reignited
You're
my
talking
love for
about
Soul to Soul.
25 years after their fame, and they performed like it was coming out the CD player. That's how good they were.
Yeah.
They were insane. Like a lot of time you go and see acts like that. Big shout out to Carol Thompson and Janet Kay as well, who we saw recently, and they were fabulous as well. Like sometimes you watch them, we saw Alexander O'Neill recently, and he was the opposite. Like you just thought, give it up, love. Like you're a star.
Shame.
We're always gonna love you, but give it up. But Soul to Soul were fabulous, like fabulous.
They were really, really, really fabulous. And it's funny because as much as I love Soul to Soul in the 80s and 90s, they weren't really at the forefront of my musical, I don't know what you call it, but I hadn't really, musical appreciation. I hadn't really listened to them in a few years. So me seeing Soul to Soul before they came on, I remember thinking, oh yeah, they should be all right, a bit nostalgic and stuff. And by the time they came off, I was like, right, I need to listen to Soul
and they had all the electric violins and everything. To be fair, I like this discussion because on my list would be things like 1950s Miles Davis and 1970s
Nice.
Miles Davis? Like, do you like?
Yeah.
How did you get from this quintessential jazz to saying, right now I'm going to get the electric out and I'm going to try and make it a bit psychedelic and funky? So I do like that idea of kind of who could you see, and you know what I mean, like who's on your list. But in this day and age, everyone tours, because you see, back then you made money selling records. Now you make money touring. So modern artists, being able to see them is easy because everybody wants to tour because everyone wants to get paid.
Yeah.
Where we go back, you know, we would have to wait 4 years for each album and you get one tour per album. Drake's over here twice a year. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
Like, it's not the same anymore.
Yeah.
So anyone I want to see now, I could just go and see. But you go back to the 70s, if you missed that one gig, you may never see them again.
Yeah, you might be done.
Yeah.
Did you folks ever get to see Janet Jackson?
Nah.
I'm saying it like Janet Jackson is long may she continue to, but have you ever seen, I mean, I'm thinking of things like the Rhythm Nation tour where you might see it on TV and go, oh my God, that's a game changer.
The closest I ever got was I was going to go to the Dubai World Cup horse racing and they have a concert after and the concert they had after was Janet Jackson. But I didn't get to go, so I missed it. It was just a shame. The only thing is, right, I think you're right, you have to catch Janet Jackson then, because there's all those kind of Janet incidents like the Super Bowl with Justin Timberlake, do you remember?
Oh, she got thrown under the bus.
Yeah. So I think sometimes
Janet Jackson forever.
Sometimes you've got to be, sometimes some artists you only really want to see in their peak. Other ones you can kind of just pick. I went to see Jamiroquai last year in the summer and they were fantastic. They were fantastic. Not lost a step. But other acts I've been to see and thought, oh Lord, I wish I never came to see it. Like Jodeci.
Did you see Jodeci? And shout out to Jay Bishop if you're listening to this. Shout out to Jay Bishop.
Like 3 or 4 years ago, and I nearly cried.
Not in a good way.
Yeah, it was terrible.
Yeah. But Mark, I'd say the same thing about New Edition. I wouldn't want to go and see New Edition now because I think Bobby's past it.
It was just too much. It was one step too far.
Speaking of one step too far, have you seen the footage of Mr. Dalvin damn near killing himself at Wembley Stadium, I think it is, jumping way too high off the stage?
Yeah. Man.
God damn.
So I'd like to say thank you very much for Mark and Lee for joining me for this episode. It's been fascinating. I've really enjoyed it. Please do get in touch and talk to us about your favourite gigs that you've been to, favourite live performances that you've seen. You can get us on our blog, which is influencepodcast.co.uk. As usual, we will have a playlist to go along with this episode, as well as our regular recommended tracks to check out for the week. You can find that on iTunes and Spotify. If you go on our Instagram, links are there to it. Guys, thanks a lot. I'll be talking to you guys soon. Listeners, thank you very much for taking the time to listen, and we look forward to your feedback. Take care. Bye-bye.
Influence Music Podcast. We exploring new music and making connections back to previous musical generations via panel debates, conversations and interviews with artists, enthusiasts and media insiders.